Hello, everybody, wherever you are in the world. This is Marketing Electronics Podcast at Tech Explicit. With us today is George Bournazian. I'm going to tell you a little story about him that my colleague, who's also on here, Mike Markowitz. Mike is the editor at large at Tech Explicit. My name is Bolaji Ojo, editor-in-chief. George is our guest. And for full disclosure, George also spends some time helping us with our own marketing efforts. So that's full disclosure upfront. Now, George's name is interesting. His background is even more interesting. But I wanted to talk about his name just as we get started because I think Mike said something just as we were prepping for this discussion. Mike, you said something about names that I'd like you to just kind of repeat to our listeners.
Dale Carnegie, who offers a course in public speaking, among other things, once said that to a person, their name is the most beautiful word in their language.
Very, very interesting. George, welcome.
Thank you, Balaji. Happy to be here.
Help us say your last name again.
Yeah, so it depends. If you're in the United States, Bournazian, it's pronounced like it's spelled, but if you're from the old country, it would be Bournazian. So,
and where's the old country?
Armenia, Middle East,
Okay.
right?
How does that kind of lesson, how does it play, by the way, in marketing electronics? You know, what Mike said now, he said to a person, the most beautiful word in the world is the name. To some companies, the most beautiful, the most desirable, the most everything product in the world is the one that they are marketing. Does that kind of resonate in the marketing world?
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, back in the old days before social media and digital marketing, it all started with a handshake. And if someone looked at your business card and knew that they were going to struggle or risk making a mistake at the pronunciation, it became an icebreaker. Hey, how do you pronounce your name? And then the next question is, what background is that, right? And all of a sudden, you're engaged in conversation with the engineer or whatever. You're not even talking business yet, and there's already a conversation taking place. So the name, I get it. It's been a great conversation piece for me throughout the years. But gymnasium was also the most popular pronunciation that people would take.
So for our listeners and folks who are on this call, George is the founder of All Business Marketing. And George has been in the electronics industry. His background is in engineering, by the way. And he's had some splendid experience in sales, in addition to the design engineering desk, which he fled from as soon as he could and dove into sales and marketing. But George is the founder, like I said, of All Business Marketing, and he has had about 35 years in this industry. So we purposely went after him because of that background, and he's still in that business. So which is why we really wanted to talk with you, George. George, welcome, and then let's explore your background. Tell us about George Bournazian.
Sure. Again, thanks for having me here. There's no way to avoid dating myself, but I went to an engineering school called, at the time, Clarkson College of Technology. It's now Clarkson University, always was a big hockey school up in upstate New York. Great chemical engineering, great EE school. And I went there not to be an engineer. I wanted just to be able to speak with them. And ended up being one of the best decisions I made in my life because Clarkson at the time was one of two schools, Texas A&M, I believe, was the other one at the time, that offered this degree where you could come out of Clarkson after 4 years with a degree in manufacturing engineering, certainly technical sales, which is where I ended up going into. But EE, thermal, physics, chemistry, you name it. It was a tremendous degree and prepped me for exactly what I wished for, just to be able to speak with engineers. And as you'll know, in today's world, it's still being able to ask the right questions is a suitable substitute for not having all the answers. Just ask the right question. You can impress the person you're speaking with that, hey, you know a little bit and you're able to understand their answer. So Clarkson served me well. I then went on to get my master's at Johns Hopkins while I was working for Eaton's electronic components division. And the whole career started there. And it's really where I'd like to just start for a second. Technical sales. I had never done anything like that prior to college. Didn't really even know what was involved or what I was getting into. And I'm going to start back with what training used to be at the corporate level. And Eaton Corporation sent me and about 20 other new sales engineers up to Milwaukee, where the division headquarters were. And we were there for 2 weeks, solid. Went through all the courses together. We didn't do the Dale Carnegie. We did the Xerox Professional Selling Program. But that was just a part of it. Training with all the divisions, products managers coming in, giving you their training. And then after the 2 weeks, you went and spent several days at each of the plants to get an experience of being inside a manufacturing facility and understanding the bits and pieces of what goes on there. So I tell that story because you would think everyone does it that way. And for years to come, you still thought that was repeated, but it wasn't. It didn't take very long before that 2 weeks plus of training that I received got condensed down to 2 days, just with Eaton. So I'm looking at these professional sales engineers. How can they possibly know what they need to know in 2 days, what took me 3 weeks of training? So you could automatically see the distilling down, the cheapening of things, because what was taking place, if you look from the late 70s through the 80s to the early 90s, I mean, the internet really hadn't burst on the scene yet. So you still had to go to an AT&T payphone to make a call to the plant or call a customer to say, oh, our shipment's going to be late, the whole 9 yards. So I'm taking you through a quick technology thing that took years to happen, but then the internet happened and the cell phone happened. Those two things began to change how technical sales, and then as I'll get into it, marketing started to function. So I feel very lucky, one, to have been living through that, got my first traffic ticket in North Carolina, rushing to a payphone to tell the plant that I'd got my first IBM order. The cop was really happy to hear that, but gave me the ticket anyway. But could have avoided all that if cell phones had really been invented or adopted by then. But
You might also have been caught speaking on your cell phone without an earpiece, which you would have
oh,
received
true, that
for the
Wi-Fi
ticket.
didn't exist for sure, right? So the first observation was what's ever transpired between then and today doesn't replace a couple of things, and this is after more than 4 decades in the industry and in the business. Some things there's no shortcut for. And what do I mean by that? My first boss taught me that the most important hour of the day is the lunch hour. And he said, if you aren't showing me an expense book of 5 lunches every week, then you're not doing your job. Now, you try and enforce that today. I mean, you can't even meet with people, let alone know where they are and meet them for lunch. But he was so true, because what you are able to talk with anyone, whether it's an engineer, buyer, whatever, over lunch, you're never able to do over the phone or, in today's world, over a computer screen meeting. It's not the same. I just got back from the EDS conference a couple of weeks ago in Vegas. I hadn't been there in 5 years, largely due to COVID, and things were changing. People were using the conference for different reasons and means than they had in the past. But I went just to renew relationships, and that still held true. The things you talk with people about in person, face to face, over an extended period of time, you can't replace that. So, again, another observation, if you're trying to market, which in my opinion includes selling, observation number one, if you haven't sold anything in your professional career, you can't possibly market to the extent because you don't understand what it's like out there in the real world. You don't understand what the salespeople are up against. A good marketer can understand and therefore apply what he knows or she knows to come up with the right strategies and tactics. But that is one observation I will take to the end. I encounter so many people that, even if they haven't sold, they haven't taken the time to go travel with one of their sales engineers or one of their salesmen just to understand what's their day like, or what are the kinds of things that they can run into that could halt or delay or stop a project from advancing. Run into it all the time, worse now, and it's no one's fault necessarily, because if you're working remotely, or if your company hasn't given you any kind of a travel budget, or worse, if you don't have a boss who knows this is the right thing, this would be a great 1 or 2 day investment. I mean, just think about the demise of some trade shows and frequency back in the days when there were 4 big electronic component trade shows in North America alone, right? SouthCon, WestCon, MidCon, and then these were trade shows that you had to be at every year, in and out, and then they've disappeared. So those people that never had a trade show experience, how do they know how to conduct themselves, or how to make an opportunity out of nothing at a trade show? If you've never done that, you're at a disadvantage, and then you're therefore relying on what you do know, social media, because that's what you grew up in. Second observation, it's one thing to understand what you know. It's another thing to understand what you don't know and go and try and fill that void. That's another thing that I see missing today. There's so many things that you can spend your discretionary time on, especially with AI now. It's like, what do you want to know and how fast do you want to know it? But if you don't really care about what you don't know, then how can you really bring value into the electronics marketing space? So, I don't mean to keep jumping back and forth between 40 years ago and today, but the fact of the matter is I learn every day. I try to use what I learn the same day. And some people who learn never really learn how to apply what they know, which is a real shame in marketing, because in the end, just had a client meeting this morning. Middle-aged people, very, very good at what they do, but they don't know what we know. And there's no way they can know it all, because those experiences that we have and that we've built upon aren't available to them and never will be. So after the Eaton experience, technical selling, I was one of the fortunate ones, got promoted into marketing management, which was my ultimate goal, and got into the plant that I wanted to be the marketing manager for, which leads me to my second phase of discussion here. Can a company sell and generate revenue without a marketing department?
All right. Sorry, George.
Right.
We're going to get into that. Mike, jump in anytime, to look at that background. By the way, guys, Mike spent like 20 plus years at one of the industry's largest semiconductor company in the PR, technical, media, and all that kind of section, which I see as some form of marketing. So Mike is probably going to pull some of his own experience in asking George some questions. But so Mike, anytime you feel like jumping into it.
Okay. So far, George is doing a great job, and I'm most interested, frankly, at the moment in how things have changed and what's the new reality in terms of marketing to our customers or to an electronics uh, company's customers.
Yeah, you want me to address that right now?
I would say keep going with your story, George, and then we'll get to that.
Yeah, because it
So,
all builds up to a bigger ending, I think.
so the
So
question you asked, George, was,
yeah.
so just to remind everybody, what was that question?
Oh, does a company have to have a marketing department to sell and produce a consistent revenue, right? And the opposite is, does a company need a sales force to produce a revenue on a consistent basis? And the answers to both those questions is yes, it can. We have a great example of the latter in DigiKey. How many years did DigiKey grow and sell and continue to market and take market share and build a customer base without any sales force on the street? Great example. On the other hand, when I said, can a company produce a revenue and a consistent sales without a marketing department? I was speaking about Eaton. So I walked into this marketing management role of this one plant. And prior to that, I had been one of the higher producing sales engineers for that plant. So I knew the product very well, was excited about it, and walked in there, and there was no advertising budget. There wasn't even a budget for a new catalog. And it's like, whoa. So what am I going to do? Right. And this supports an underlying theme that you're going to hear throughout this discussion is there is no replacement for the face-to-face impact. And recognizing that I had to fight for budget for a catalog, I hit the road. I started making calls with the sales engineers into other clients that I had never, or customers I had never been exposed to, just being on a regional sales, and managed to do that until we did get a budget. So no replacement for face to face and being able to go out and show an engineer that as a representative from a factory, marketing, you know more about your product than the sales guy does or than they do, and then be able to provide a solution. Um, Great story. Black and Decker, you got to hear this one.
Okay, go ahead.
Black and Decker decides to get into the home labor-saving device market to supplement their power tools. And they called me at my miniature switch plant to come in, and they said, we want a switch that does this, and this, and only costs 39 cents. And I said, okay, I think we can do that. I had no idea how we were going to do that, but at the volumes they were talking about, definitely wanted to bring it back to the plant. And you'll appreciate this because I think I was maybe 20, 28, 29 years old at the time. And our engineering manager was 109 at that point. And I bring the opportunity to him, and I said, the volume's going to be 40,000 a week to start. And his answer to me was, we don't make cheap switches. And I said, well, I know that. I said, that's why they called us. I said, I'm not asking you to make a cheap switch. I'm asking you to make a really good switch that I can sell for 39 cents and make money. And engineering, teamwork, we developed it and we made money on it. And Black and Decker gave everyone in our plant one of those labor saving devices. I can't remember what the name of it was, but I still had it for like 30 years. The thing worked. It's like a brick house. But again, face to face knowledge and knowing what you can and cannot do is invaluable. But the marketing aspect of it didn't come until we started tooling things like that competed with our number one competitor. Well, heck, I'll say it. It was C&K. To me, one of the finest companies that ever brought a marketing program to the marketplace. Phenomenal. I was always a distant number two to them. And I remember one day I convinced the plant to tool up a bracket. It was a high volume bracket. We could never get into the business. And we had an opportunity to take an order. And the client or the customer needed it in 4 weeks. We couldn't deliver for 6. And I can say the story because the players aren't around anymore. But I took the order, and my plant manager said, "What are you doing? We can't deliver for 6 weeks." And I said, "I know." He goes, "But you told them we could deliver in 4." I said, "Yeah." I said, "We're going to call C&K and buy some of those brackets from them." And he says, "You're out of your mind." I said, "No, no." I said, give me a chance." And I called the president. I called the owner, and he knew who I was. I certainly knew who he was. And I told him I had a problem. Said we had an accident in the tool room. It was going to delay us a couple of weeks, and I needed 10,000 brackets. Could he help me? And he said to me, "George," he goes, "there's a 50% chance you're taking the order from Dialite or you're taking it from me." And I said, "I'm not the salesman on the account." So I said, "I don't really know who we're taking it from." But I said, "I'll tell you this." I said, "If you ever needed anything, you could call me and I will take care of you." And I had 10,000 brackets the next morning. And
Wow.
we made the shipment. But that's not the end of the story. The end of the story is years later, I was working for a technical agency in Raleigh, and one of our clients was ElectroSwitch. And I was in there meeting their new president, who tells me that he used to work for C&K. And I said, "Oh," I said, "I've got an interesting story for you." I tell him the story, and he says, "I was in the office telling Pete not to ship you those brackets." So again, it's small world. We hit off a great relationship for a number of years, but you just never know. You never know. And that's what's great about this industry. But
George, let's talk about the intersection of sales and marketing. I think you've kind of been delving into that, but let's dive a little bit deeper into it, because now you run a marketing company that's not into sales for your clients.
right.
So, I'd like you to kind of just paint the picture of when you are in sales and you had a leg in marketing. Let's talk about how sales and marketing cooperate. And then and then I like to move into the creation, how you decided to set up all business marketing.
Yeah. Great question. Old school sales always reported to marketing, no matter what the organizational structure was. Certainly was that way at the time at Eaton. Sales reported up to the VP of marketing. Then all of a sudden, something changed in industry. I don't know what it was, where sales reported to the president, marketing reported to the president, and you start seeing this breakdown of the relationship. Marketing was always there, in my opinion, to support sales. We knew more about where the company needed to go, product direction wise. We got information and feedback from sales. There was absolutely a symbiotic relationship there. One couldn't exist without the other in a perfect world. The minute that whole reporting structure changed and you start introducing politics, and then companies acquiring other companies, right? It started diluting what I consider to be the effectiveness of the whole marketing sales relationship. And then, of course, with the onset of the internet, where hell, you don't need to have a salesperson, you don't need to see anyone, just find what you want, buy it through a click on a mouse. And you start to see where generations of people would grow up. They might have been good candidates for technical sales, but they didn't know anything about it because it doesn't exist anymore, or it exists on a different scale, on a different front. So marketing, I ended up after Eaton, I went with an entrepreneur who was actually a customer and grew that company. It was a system sell, not a component sell. which was another advantage. Most people don't jettison their industry and contacts and knowledge. They build, move to another country or company. But in my case, I just left the electronics components industry altogether, went into system sales, understanding the difference between a distributor and a dealer. And what an experience that was. A lot of world travel, finding out how to make a product that meets international standards and doing business in Japan and Germany. So that was a great experience. But after 10 years, and it was in the graphic arts industry actually, and seeing how digital was changing that, I got out and got back into the electronics industry, which I always liked, and was actually going to go back into technical sales with a rep buddy of mine, but a company by the name of Business to Business Marketing called me uh, here in Raleigh and invited me to lunch and said, "We're not leaving the table until you come join our company." And what they wanted to do was expand their customer base of electronic components companies. So I joined them, and for 17 years, we we made Raleigh a center of business support marketing for electronic components companies. We had a great list of clients over the years. Um, but fast forward to 2012, and two things. After 2001, I mean, everyone remembers 9/11. Those of us who remember the telecom bubble burst that happened right before that, that was a killer.
Yeah, yeah,
Was the difference between you go visit a client in Texas and they would pay for your airfare and they would pay for your hotel. Those days went out the window just like that, which put another amazing pressure on the profitability of any business, let alone a marketing agency. But we uh, we noticed after that Fridays were typically the busiest day of any agency. Why do I say that? Because the people, managers on up to VPs, directors, if there was one day of the week that they weren't traveling, it was a Friday. And that would be the day that they would come back to us, a service provider, with decisions and answers and direction on how to keep the projects moving forward. So we used to joke about it that if it weren't a frantic Friday, then we better start looking at what the economic barometer was at the time. And
Yeah.
this remains true to this day, ever since 2001. Whenever we had 3 Fridays in a row that were not frantic Fridays, we went into austerity budget mode because we knew something bad was going to happen. And it happened in 2008, 2011, 2014, and it started happening in quicker increments, right? And at about the same time of the 2011 slowdown, where we had never had a layoff at BTB in all those years, but we did that year. And I started noticing that the true agency business model, make expensive brochures, do PR, do ad materials, do identity type stuff, that was no longer enough to sustain a traditional marketing agency. Was not. And the president, who I have a lot of respect for, learned a lot from him. He didn't want to venture outside of the traditional media business model. So at that point, we decided to part ways, and I started ABM with one mantra that we remain true to today. We want to be a full service agency. We don't have to do everything for everyone. We just will provide what they need because recognizing that everyone had some degree of in-house skill set resources, we can work with anyone. And no contracts. If you like working with us, you'll stay working with us. If you want to move on, you move on. And so that was the launch of ABM back in 2014, and it was 11 years ago, and we still hold to those ideals today. And what's changed is the client, the type of client, more international. We happen to do very well with German-based companies. I don't know why, but and Japanese companies. But more importantly, it's the various mediums and technologies that now allow people to do their job also impacts our business. Has every day, and I can tell you for the last 11 years, no 2 years have been the same. We keep a lot of our same clients,
Hmm.
uh, but what we do for them from one year to the next doesn't necessarily stay the same. And
I'm
what do you do to maintain that? You have to keep evolving. You have to keep adding to your services. Some things get replaced by things they can do themselves. You've got to replace it with something else. So it's an exciting business to be in. I mean, the electronics industry itself is exciting enough. I've got a great story for you. I was
okay. Kinos.
visiting Duke University, and there was a company that was spinning off from there. It wasn't even a company. It was a guy with an idea. And my contact said, come on in here. You have to meet this guy. And we talked. He showed me what he was doing. And if you think back to uh, flat screen TVs back in the early 2000s, maybe 2010, they were expensive. And there was a little substance called indium oxide that was needed to produce those screens. Well, this guy had a replacement for that. And he showed it to me. And it was the shortest client relationship I've ever had. He goes, George, if you can get me into EE Times, he goes, I'll never need you again. I said, okay. And, and that's exactly what happened. We got this an article in EE Times, and my wife said, we've got to get a flat screen TV. I said, no, we don't. I said, wait a few years. You're going to watch the price plummet. And we did get our first big flat screen TV in time for the 2012 World Cup. So great story.
Fascin-
Great story.
Fascinating story, George. One thing that I observed over the years is the fact that you talked about marketing potentially before, probably being a bigger team, and sales reporting to marketing. I think that situation, if I'm correct, has reversed completely. So, you now have the head of sales and marketing, but the emphasis that I've seen so far is mostly always on sales.
Yeah.
Marketing teams have been shrinking. I mean, I've talked with companies where, you try and get to talk with somebody in marketing and it's only one person at times. And that person is juggling so many things. They can barely even get you a response, even though they are interested in what you're doing. Now, what does that mean for companies in the electronic space? If you have had a similar experience, who is handling marketing at these companies and what kind of pressure is it coming is happening as a result of that?
Yeah, great question. And I think this is one of the sorrier parts of the story. When companies decided to go quarter by quarter thinking, it all became about sales and the pressure on marketing to produce things that instantaneously created solutions for problems that took years to create. This is the first problem. We have some clients. They don't have to be the biggest billion-dollar company. They have really talented people who understand marketing. And yes, they are older in age. They're not elderly. They're just older in age, and they have experiences that they can draw on, which make a service provider like us more efficient. So back to your question, this is something that needs to be corrected. And how do you do that? You raise the credibility of marketing. There are very few people in marketing who can defend themselves.
Hmm.
What do I mean by
George,
that?
I'm gonna take you up on that.
Yeah.
If you make a statement like you raise the credibility of marketing, that implies that marketing has a credibility problem.
Yeah. Oh, I
Does
think
it?
so. I think so.
Okay, all right, let's dive into that.
Well, I can prove it. You can ask a CEO, a president, a VP of marketing, and or a CFO. Any one of those can ask the VP of marketing, what's marketing doing for us? A legitimate question, wide open. You can answer that any number of ways, okay? Or another question, how much is marketing contributing to our revenue? We spend X number of dollars a year in the marketing budget. What are we getting for that? Three legitimate questions that any company, big or small, any title at the C-suite level ought to be able to ask, and they cannot get a question answered. That's what I'm talking about, the credibility of marketing. The people that are occupying marketing roles don't know how to answer it. They don't know how to answer it.
Well, I would argue they know how to answer it. They just don't have data. A lot of it is hand waving. A lot of the data is too far in the future to actually present.
Good point, Mike. They don't have access to the data in some cases because they never asked for it. I can't tell you how many times I would be in a meeting with a client with their marketing department and ask an innocent question like, "Hey, what are the top product categories moving for you? What's successful?" And some would know, others would be a little bit more vague. And then I would ask about, well, what about product Y? Oh, we don't worry about that. We don't sell very many of those. That was my all-time favorite answer. Well, geez, maybe if we marketed it, you might be able to sell a little bit more. Is it profitable? How do you know? But if they don't ask for the data, I remember back in the days before even fax machines, I knew exactly what was selling out of our plant every day. Have a report. Dot matrix printer, but I knew what was selling every day. You can't tell me that that kind of information isn't available to every marketing person, manager or not, that they should know what's being sold out of their plant every day. There's another thing too. Should marketing be in the plant? Answer, yes. This remote marketing departments doesn't cut it for me. You can't know what you need to know about your business, your product, and you're supposed to determine profitability. You can't know it if you're not in the plant. And unfortunately, that was another thing that changed, which contributed to the lack of credibility in marketing, Bournazian, getting back to your question. So how do you fix that? There are some tools, right? It's not rocket science for a marketing manager to be able to figure out the answers to those questions. We developed, out of necessity, a marketing return on investment tool. It was designed to do just that, help marketing answer the questions that I stated earlier. And they can even go so far as to answer, hey, if I'm a $50 million business and I want to grow to be $100 million in 5 years, what should I invest in marketing to do that? Another decent question. The model helps answer that. But here's where the marketing credibility comes in. What if it tells you need to spend $400,000 a year on marketing to get to your number? You still have to know what to do with the money. And that's where the marketing expertise comes in, along with the understanding of sales and know what it takes, depending on what it is you're selling. This thing works for a service-related business, not just a widget. You can make whatever you want. But marketing has been dumbed down to, think back to after the 9/11 incident and the telecom bubble burst, where a whole bunch of really talented graphic designers were put out on the street, and all of a sudden there was just freelancers galore, prices were dropping. And if someone got hired into a manufacturer's marketing department because they knew Photoshop or InDesign, well then They were a marketing person when really all they were a graphic designer. And all of a sudden, you've got all these various interpretations of what constitutes a marketing department and what's expected of our marketing department. So this is a big problem, Balaji.
That's not going to change. That's not going to change, George. I mean, you just gave the perfect example of the confusion when it comes to marketing. I mean, if you can edit video, you are in marketing. If you can if you can use one of these apps,
Oh, if you can
all
use a
of this.
camera, if you can use a
Yeah,
camera, yeah.
yes, you are already in marketing. Every single point you've raised so far, to be frank, raises every single one of them adds up to the pile of questions that I've gone in my mind, and we don't have the time to address them all. However, I'll pick one. You
Okay.
said that marketing as an example in the electronic space. Let's use that segment. You said marketing should be in manufacturing, should be at the plant. Okay, well,
Yeah.
you run an external marketing company.
Yeah.
How do they get you involved? How do they get you into the plant?
We travel. If a company will have us, here's another thing.
Okay.
I'm at the service side of things because I didn't want to work for any one company anymore. I like working for a lot of different ones. But the fact of the matter is, if we have a new client, we'll go and sit in on their training sessions when they're training new reps or training new distributors. If there's a time and a place that's convenient and we'll sit in the back, we'll participate right there in the learning. Why not? I need to learn what their salesmen are learning. Again, if you don't know what you don't know, then how can you improve, and what qualifies me to be an advisor to them? So the idea of traveling, going to these places, visiting these places. I mean, from a marketing perspective, you can draw conclusions if you walk into a plant that is state of the art, clean, all buttoned up, ready to go, take on the world, or one that was left back in the 90s. All right. You got to deal with those issues, most likely quality and consistency. But you got to understand as much as you can about your product so that you can come up with the right marketing strategy, tactics, and programs that make them succeed. So there's no shortcuts. It's a discipline. It's a discipline. And it's the nice thing is it's never too late to start. So you look at as much of a global market as our electronics industry has become, look at all the shortcuts that people try to take, right? We make it in the lowest cost center. We put our marketing in remote areas. We put our salespeople in remote areas, our technical support people in remote areas. And we expect it all to run like a finely oiled machine. And what's the price that we pay for that? Shortcuts, things are missing. You leave openings for competition to take advantage of business opportunities that you missed. And we wind up in a situation like we are right now. And what's the situation? We have a disruptor. We have a tariff issue. Well, for those of us who remember what the Hunt brothers did from 1978 to 1980 with the silver market and the price of silver, I remember working at a sales desk having to redo distributor price lists every 2 weeks. There was no such thing as quoting a year-long program. Every 2 weeks, we were preparing and printing and mailing because there was no internet. So did we get through it? Yeah, because it lasted a long time. But we didn't stop doing business. We didn't stop doing the right things. So we fast forward to today, and I can only begin to imagine. A lot of our clients all make product offshore, and some are more heavily tariffed than others. But what are you going to do about it? Right? That's the question. And a marketing team in tune with its plant, its costs, its focus, its new product developments, there's a company that I can work with. But there's too many right now that are just doing nothing because they don't know what to do.
Mike, you have any questions? I
No,
apologize.
no, I'm asking as we go.
Okay. All right. George, let's cut to today. Let's
Yeah.
see what's going on in today's world. And you outline some issues that I see as challenges. We've kind of scaled down marketing to the point where it's almost an afterthought for some companies or an outsourced service. So in this environment, and you also mentioned tariffs, okay, which kind of complicate things for a lot of companies.
Yeah.
I, because we don't have 2 hours to discuss it, I have a double-barreled question, which is one, what are the best practices for today? And number two, as quickly as you can, what do you see ahead? I mean, how do we make the situation better for companies to?
Well, fortunately, there are some good answers to that. And I've had the pleasure of working with one even to this day and they're not the biggest company, they're not a semiconductor company, but they are a company that has spent the money to tie up the loose ends between sales, Salesforce, their marketing automation. And what do I mean by that? They can tell me, an outsider, which they treat like a friend of the family, they can tell us to this day, hey, we just got a development project, and it started from a campaign you ran with us 2 years in this book or in this Google ad. So what am I describing? I'm talking about a company that has taken the time to understand what their communications and promotional programs are doing and what they're creating and what they result in. Even if it takes 2 years down the road, they can identify it. Secondly, they are doing everything they can to understand their customer base. Who are their customers? What do we know about them? And what do we need to do to get more just like them? This goes beyond a little bit of account-based marketing. It goes beyond that. And from what I see for marketing going forward, it gets back to the knowledge. We're just going to accumulate it and acquire it differently than we did 40 years ago when all we had was a phone or a car to get us there to a direct lunch with the guy. We have to stop relying on the highway billboards. What do I mean by that? Google AdWords. It's not just Google, Microsoft ads. Those served a purpose for those people that were generically interested in stuff like gasoline and car tires, et cetera. Just put a billboard up there, they will come. We are way beyond that. We're dealing with companies that maybe used to be a one-trick pony. They made power supplies. But now that same company through acquisition makes connectors, passive components, whatever. So what are they going to do to understand their customer base? And what I think marketing today needs to do, whether it's in-house marketing or with the assistance of a company like us, build your own contact database. That's not rocket science. Oh, I've got Salesforce. Yeah, but what are you doing with it? And what can you tell me from your collection? I'll go one better. The marketing departments today that are spending money, they want leads, with the exception of, people like DigiKey and Mauser that just wants traffic. They'll convert on their own. But for the most part, companies making widgets, they want leads because they want to give their reps or their salesmen something to go follow up on. Well, geez, when I was a salesman, I had to generate those interests on my own. That hasn't changed. But so build your own database of really vetted contacts. They may not be ones you're doing business with right now, but those are the targets you need to go after. And again, it's more than account-based marketing. And fortunately, with AI and with the assistance of older people that have been working in the business, this can happen. It's very affordable and it produces better results. I'm going to go one step further relative to media.
Okay.
Media. Um, Today, Why are so many going out of business? Why are so many looking to sell? Because they don't have an answer to what's the next step. What should we be doing next? And several of them realized, hey, our contact database is our largest asset. What do we need to do to make that pay off for advertisers, our clients? That's the right question to ask. So few of them have come up with the solutions for agencies like us. We've been asking for it for years. I go to Electronic every 2 years, have been for 20 some odd years. And I meet with all the big media players because I want to know what's new. What are you guys doing to help companies here or my clients in the States that want to sell over here? What are you doing to help them do that? I keep hearing, just happened last November, well, not much has changed. Why is that? Because Europe did a great job of protecting print publications. Don't know how much longer they can keep that up. They use GDPR as a nice little web to skew things. The fact of the matter is, if you don't know anything about your customer base in Europe, whether you're doing print magazines or whatever, how do you expect to change the results of what you're doing from a marketing standpoint? You can't. So build the database, do the homework. There are tools out there and ways to do it. We're seeing, and this is fact, you can ask people, hey, what's the normal open rate of your newsletter, blah, 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 blah. If it's 20, 25, 30, 35%, you're happy with that. Oh, okay, that's good. I'll put my money there. We're seeing 60% open rates just by pushing stuff out to our contact database that we've created. So it's not a replacement, but it's an addition to. And what does it all lead to? The more you know about your customers and your target customers, the more successful you'll be with less money to spend doing it. So we've already established the fact that with less credibility, marketing's not going to get the budgets they had before. It's clear they're not.
Yeah.
And why would you if you're a president? I'm not getting the return. So what can you do with the money you get? Not the same old, same old.
George, we're going to have to invite you back, and I'll tell you one of the reasons why. In the electronics industry, I can say without a doubt that marketing budgets have gone down. Okay, I've worked for many publications over the course of the last 40 plus years, and I've seen that downward trend. At the same time, though, the total sales value of electronics components has only been going up.
Yeah.
So they've been doing something right. Okay, even though so many companies are falling by the wayside, and I don't know whether it's because they don't have effective marketing or whatever. But I like to kind of have you comment on something that Steve Jobs said, and I can say that he said it because there was a video recording of him, if it's not faked AI, he said marketing is about selling values. It's not just about selling a product. You're selling a value. And since this is about ABM, all business marketing, I'm going to personalize it, George.
Yeah.
What is the value that ABM is selling?
With one thing, every proposal we put together, it always includes one thing at the end. I mean, there's a statement of the objective, an understanding of the objective. Here's the strategy. Here's the tactics, and then here's what's missing a lot. Here's what you can expect. Okay, and if we know what we're doing and it's not a risk, we're not gambling with our clients' money, we got to be able to tell them what they can expect. And I see so little of that today.
George, let me ask a question related to
Mike.
that. Say, we tell them what they can expect from their marketing, your marketing proposal to them. There's not a dollar value to that, is there? I mean, you're not going to say, you can expect that your sales are going to go up $1 million. That, to me, that's the fundamental problem with marketing, is that you've got all of this other stuff that you can measure, but it doesn't translate into what the customer wants in the end, which is the dollars.
That's because of one thing, Mike, because it could go there. And I've had that question asked to me several times. And I said, absolutely, I will guarantee that. when is your sales force going to report to me? Okay.
Yeah, and the answer to that is never.
Well, so then, don't ask me the question that I can't answer because I don't have control over a vital element. In this case, the sales force.
So that disassociation of sales and marketing, from your perspective, is not in the interest of the industry.
Definitely not. Case in point, I would have been willing to stake ABM's reputation on the performance of a program if I knew sales would be able to execute to a plan that was part of ours, right? But if it's not, I mean, how many times have you seen companies where sales management is at odds with marketing management? All bets.
Assuming there is both sales management and marketing management, it's all the time.
Well, and here's the other thing. It puts greater pressure on marketing departments and the marketing programs they want to implement to produce on their own without the assistance of sales. It's just not, it's not right. It's not fair. Company is well, I made my point. But unfortunately, this is the world we live in today. And Bournazian, to answer your question about going forward, we're trying to change that. With the clients that we work with, we introduce different ways, different thinking, different approaches that make sense. Hey, that makes sense. Let's try it. Let's do it. And you hope that everyone inside the company has the skill set to execute. And if you fall short, regroup, amend, and try again.
Fantastic. That's the perfect angle to end our discussion. We're probably going to try and take some Q&A when we put this together. So you can expect some folks to come out guns blazing to ask you some questions.
Yeah.
It has really been a pleasure. This is George Bournazian with All Business Marketing, a veteran of the electronics, engineering, sales, and marketing industry, and a real asset to Tech Explicit. I can say that because he's helped 2 years in a row now to help steer us in the right direction. Hopefully, we can continue to call on you, and the industry can continue to benefit from your expertise and knowledge. George, it's been a pleasure. Mike?
Thank you. Yeah,
always
Mike.
Good to see you both. And we'll talk again soon.
Yep. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. Thanks.
Okay.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.